Hi there. In the second part of Albert Camus' The Plague, the narrator tells us, and I'm paraphrasing, that the first thing that the plague brought to our city was an exile. But a few pages later, what he tells us is in fact that there were those within that exile that were exiled themselves, an exile within an exile. What he meant is those who were separated due to their socioeconomic status, ethnic descent, or different political and cultural opinions. David Harvey recently wrote about the COVID-19 plague that it is a class, gendered, and racialized pandemic. The link is below, like other links here. What he meant is that minorities are being punished twice here. First, because they're fighting at the forefront of the plague and are exposed to it. Just think about all the servicemen and women around us. And second, because they're the ones actually suffering more from the tightening of control. Just think about the wide use of racial profiling around us. So from a political perspective, the plague has exposed the inherent condition of inequality and the political and economic specific forms of oppression by the state, by private corporations, and by us, citizens, who actually take part in what the sociologist David Lehigh called the surveillance state or the surveillance culture. In the next minute, I want to speak about the emergency decrees and the surveillance that is used in order to create that form of exile within exile. So if we say that the plague has exposed a certain fundamental issue of inequality, it does so via the control of life, or what the philosopher Michel Foucault called make live and let die. That is the heart of the biopolitical state. Let me give you a few examples of what I mean by that. So China has recently extended surveillance technology used before in order to imprison and oppress the Muslim minority in the Xinjiang area. It used facial recognition programs, CCTV, drones, apps, themselves operated by artificial intelligence, etc. Russia used the over 1 million CCTV cameras spread over Moscow in order to follow and track down those it suspected of suffering from the virus, including a use of an app that is supposedly self-disciplining. The Israeli state used the database of the Secret Service, and the Ministry of Defense was trying to actually connect that to an AI program operated by NSO, a private corporation responsible for many violations of human rights. Hungary, Turkmenistan, Turkey, Philippines, and Iran, all of them crack down on media, including social media. For instance, in Hungary, if you say something about that the regime identifies as disinformation, quote unquote, you're actually risking 5 years in prison. In the Philippines, you might as well be shot. In the States, we've seen recently an attempt by the Justice Department and the Attorney General to undermine at least the right of habeas corpus. In other words, if the governmental bodies maybe abuse the crisis in order to consolidate power by using our desperate need of regulated state intervention, they did so via surveillance technology, and thanks to the crisis, opening a path for the growing fusion between governmental bodies, private corporations, and civilian interests. Using again surveillance, they did so in order to separate minorities and political dissidents in order to shape an exile within an exile, or what Camus called the Most Exiled.